Hello and welcome to Breaking Bread with Rivaaj Maharaj, where nothing is off the table. For today's episode, I want to talk about a post on X by Ray McGovern. He's an ex-CIA analyst, and the guy is a legend. You know, his knowledge on foreign affairs and geopolitics is absolutely incredible. You know, he's ranked up there with guys like Larry Johnson, Colonel McGregor, you know, John Mearsheimer, Jeffrey Sachs, you know, just a lot of intellect, a lot of intelligence, and, you know, very level-headed. Not like a lot of the pundits that you see coming out there just spouting nonsense on either side of the aisle. So while there are a lot of things that I agree with what they say, there are some that I disagree. However, I tell you, I have a lot of respect for these gentlemen because of their capability, you know. And you're going to understand exactly why when we go through this article. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I've come across a post on X by Ray McGovern. I urge you to go and check it out. Follow him on Twitter. On X, if you really want some insightful commentary as to what is going on regarding geopolitics in the world, especially where the United States are involved, because Ray's been a veteran of the CIA and had a lot of experience regarding American operations abroad. So nevertheless, his post reads, with US guarantee in doubt, EU Foreign Minister Kaja Kallas is pushing a NATO-like mutual defense treaty with stronger teeth than NATO's Article 5. Yesterday, Maria Zakharova expressed her open disdain for Kallas and fellow illiterati, including Liz Truss and Annalena Baerbock. Now, right off the bat, I want to say, when you compare the likes of, you had her name, what was her name? Jean-Pierre or whatever, in the White House, you know, under Biden, and before her you had I forgot the other woman that went on to become a news anchor. When you compare them with the likes of people like Maria Zakharova, it's chalk and cheese. You know, you look at the average person coming out of Russia, their understanding of geopolitics history is incredible. You know, when you compare them to some of those that the West has to put forward, it's a joke. You know, I've always said, go back, if you follow my channel, if you've seen my previous videos, you'll understand. When I talk about Kaja Kallas, Ursula von der Leyen, Annalena Baerbock, you know, Keir Starmer, Sadiq Khan, these are morons. They have no concept of history. They have no understanding of anything that has happened and the incidents of the past that have led us to this point. These are spring chickens thrown on just to spout bullshit and lead the world further down a path or a descent into chaos. So I'm going to read Ray McGovern's article because, and I'm going to pin it as well. I'm going to include it in this video. I urge you to go and read it yourself, and it makes for a really good read. Russian utter disdain for Kaja Kallas, German UK leaders. April 2nd, 2026. Excerpts from Russia MFA. The 1st of the 4th, 2026. Briefing by official representative of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova, Moscow, April 1st, 2026. Question. Today is April Fool's Day. I have an idea. We are faced with the complete illiteracy of many Western officials whose activities have an impact on international life. Maybe we should allocate several places at our leading universities and invite Kaja Kallas and other EU leaders there to improve their qualifications. Now, again, I'm going to say, you know, Kaja Kallas and Annalena Baerbock, Keir Starmer, Sadiq Khan, you know, Ursula von der Leyen, these people are morons. They have no understanding of history. They are stupid. They are devoid of intellect, and they are absolutely thick. As I say, the gap between their ears is so huge, you can park an oil tanker in there because the brain is non-existent. If you were to do a brain transplant and take their brain and give it to somebody that is in need of a brain, they'll get a brand spanking new brain, because these people have never used their brain. They have no intellectual capacity. Nothing. Merz, Macron, there are a lot of them. They are as thick as they come. And the problem you have, you will always have people devoid of any intellectual capacity. You will always have morons. The problem you have is that these morons are elected to promulgate and promote policy. Policy that affects billions of people around the world. The livelihoods and the lives of these billions. And this is where it becomes a problem. Because when a moron is left to govern and help run the world, then all this nonsense you see taking place is as a result of that. You don't have statesmen and stateswomen anymore. You have morons. And I'm going to prove that to you. So, when asked the question, the answer that Maria Zakharova said was, I don't think this is funny. This is not a laughing matter. You say teach Kaja Kallas. And where should she be taught? At the university? The mistakes that she and her colleagues make are not a university program. It's grade school. Again, I keep saying, they are devoid of intellectual capacity. The grounding is missing. History, historical context, historical content is missing. I keep going back to the Canadian Parliament. When those morons stood up and saluted Yaroslav Hunka for fighting against the Russians, they were inadvertently supporting neo-Nazis and Nazism. Because if you fought in the Second World War against the Russians, that means you fought on the side of the Nazis.
We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian-Canadian war veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98. He's a Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service. To make a brief statement. I wish to apologize to the House. No one, including you, my fellow parliamentarians, or the Ukraine delegation, was privy to my remarks prior to their delivery.
Standing up in a Western democracy that had troops fighting for the benefit of the rest of humanity against the Nazis, you should hang your head in shame. You should hang your head in shame because of the atrocities perpetrated by the Nazis. Today, you have the gall to stand up and applaud a man that willingly killed Jews, Roma, Gypsies, Sinti, the disabled, the mentally disabled, the minorities, and you stand up and you applaud that. You should hang your head in shame in a Western parliament, democratic parliament, and not from spring chickens like Trudeau and that who probably paid their way through school, from people that are old enough to have known better. This is shocking. And Zelensky, the moron, stood there and applauded with them. So it goes to show you the level of stupidity within the ranks of those promoting and promulgating policy on behalf of the rest of the sane world, and how their stupid policies affect millions and billions around the world and their livelihoods. And these people care not, because I've said time and again, they have zero empathy for humanity. There's us and there's them. They look down and sneer upon us. So for all you morons that go out there and celebrate them and look at them as your savior, good luck. Good luck, because you are like lambs being herded to a slaughter. Zakharova goes on. History, 9th grade. Kaja Kallas stated that the participation of the USSR and China in the victory over fascism in World War II was news to her. When did she say that? In the year of the anniversary of the victory over Nazism and fascism, the end of the war of World War II. In the Jubilee year, she declares that the participation of the USSR and China in the victory over fascism in World War II was news to her. We are a country that lost more than 27 million citizens and hoisted the banner of victory over the Reichstag. In her opinion, where were we but defeating fascism on all fronts, on the west and then on the east? Again, it is not a university curriculum but a school curriculum. Now, again, she is right. She is right, because this moron Kallas has no clue. She's never clearly attended history throughout her schooling career, because I didn't have to go to university to learn this. This was taught to me when I was in primary school. The Russians sacrificed the most amount of civilians for the democracy or for the liberation of Europe during the Second World War. When Ribbentrop and Molotov signed a pact that they were not going to attack each other, Stalin was blindsided by Hitler when the Germans decided to launch an invasion on the USSR. Stalin had been purging generals right up until this outbreak of the Second World War. There was a lack of senior leadership. Zhukov was about the most capable guy you had there, and he did an amazing job. And Stalin sent his people like cannon fodder to the front line to go and fight the Nazis. The Russians paid an extremely high toll so that Europeans today would not be sitting under the boot of Nazi aggression and oppression. And that is something that has never sat well with me, because history has slowly shunted that to a side because it didn't fit the narrative. Again, what you think of the Russians, what you think of the Soviet regime before them, should never diminish what the Russian people put by way of their livelihood, by way of their sacrifice, their lives, so that Europe could be freed from Nazi oppression. Because remember, when Hitler launched the Blitzkrieg, the Wehrmacht had walked through France. They walked through Holland, Belgium. These states capitulated within weeks, within days, within months. There were no force for the Wehrmacht. Nothing. They could not do a thing. It was the Russians that helped the Americans and the British. But whenever you look at history, it's always painted as the Americans did, along with the British, the heavy lifting. And the Russians are a mere side note. And this is why I say the rewriting of history is dangerous. And you see the product. You see the product in these morons, Kallas and Trudeau and Keir Starmer. These are the morons that have come through a system where critical thinking does not apply, where you're not allowed to question. You fed bullshit and you believe it. And these are the people that are promulgating policy in your name. Because their inability to understand that the Russians paid an immense price for their safety and security, so that they today do not have to sit under Nazi or German boots oppressing them. It's insane. But again, Kaja Kallas knows better, right? She knows better. I don't know if she's even been to school. Looks like they found her on the side of the road somewhere and stuck her into politics, because this woman is devoid of any intellect. And Zakharova is right. It's not a university curriculum. You don't go to university to learn this. I learned this in South Africa. You can't tell me that a European living in the midst of where these battles took place was not taught this from the time she was in kindergarten. It's impossible. I fail to accept this. So she's either stupid, or she's either uneducated, or a combination of both. And any of those three scenarios is appalling, shocking, and dangerous. Kallas gets a 2. The grade range for school children in Russia is 5 for excellent, 2 for unsatisfactory. The same K. Kallas claimed that over the past 100 years, Russia has attacked 19 countries, none of which has ever attacked Russia. Does this list, or does it not, include the First World War, the Second World War, the 1918 intervention? This is all a basic school course. Kallas gets a 2. By the way, the Estonian court has already ordered her to publicly withdraw her own statements, which they found to be factually unreliable. But now, apparently, she is outside its jurisdiction, or the Estonian court has already given up on her. And you want to teach her at our universities? Now, I'm going to say this. If you see Kallas, she's recently, since the beginning of this year or the tail end of last year, 2025, been continuously thrust into the limelight. Von der Leyen is seemingly taking more and more of a back stance. Whether this is done on purpose or whether this is Kallas maneuvering because she is positioning herself and priming herself to take over the position from von der Leyen. I'm telling you now, if this idiot, if this moron Kallas goes on to head the EU, it's doom and disaster for Europe. They're already there. They've opened the door. Kallas is going to not tip them through the door. She's going to boot them through the door. And I'm telling you, this woman is going to bring about a dissolution of the European Union, because her intellect has absolutely no bounds. To put somebody like this out, if I was a European, if this woman was put forth in my name as representing me and my values, I would hang my head in shame, because this woman is as stupid as they come. You could not have found somebody more idiotic to head a foreign policy or to head the EU. So I really fear for what is coming down the pipeline, because her going into that position means that somebody even more thicker, I don't know how that's possible, but more thicker than her is going to come in as her subordinate. This is insane, really. And you know, Europe has offered in the past so much of contribution to humanity. This is going to be the defining moment where Europe was solely responsible, together with the other Western democracies and their stupid mindsets, to have helped in bringing down the levels of intelligence and intellect within humanity. Because I've never seen things like this before in my life. You know, for somebody assuming this amount of power in society to have this level of intelligence is shocking. It's absolutely shocking. Nevertheless, let's see as the article continues. As for Kallas' European colleagues, which class should we start with? The 6th grade? Geometry 6th grade. In February 2023 at the Munich Security Conference, German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock called on Russia to turn 360 degrees in order to radically change its approach. Any 6th grader knows that a 360-degree turn returns to the starting point.
Is there any chance of Ukraine being safe in the long term if Vladimir Putin is still leading Russia?
if he doesn't change by 360 degrees? No.
What is this, Bindit? First you're my friend, now you turn a 360 on me.
180, you stupid spaghetti-slurping cretin. 180. If I did a 360, I'd go completely around and end up back where I started.
Baerbock gets a solid 2, although I'm not sure if it's even a 2. We all make mistakes. And, it could be a slip of the tongue. But when these people continuously go out and speak nonsense and talk rubbish, these slips can't be looked at as mistakes. When a statesman makes a mistake, but you look at their track record, you can say, oh, it was a slip of the tongue, it was a mistake. Nobody knows everything. But when somebody continuously drives a policy that is insane, when somebody continuously goes out and talks, promotes false narratives, lies, cheats, deceives, and then also has zero intellect to even try and back any of those things up, has zero knowledge of general knowledge, then you understand that these are not mistakes. These are just stupid people that have been put into power. And that is why they put into power. Because anybody with a brain would not have agreed to a lot of the bullshit that they spout. They're in there just to make themselves look good, to get their power rush, and to make money. That's it. If you had to take Kallas out of this system and give her a job in society, there is nothing in society that she's capable of doing. So she would have probably, if she was in the UK, she would have had to have been supported by the taxpayer on benefits, because there is nothing that she can go out there and offer to humanity. Nothing. If you had to get her to pack a shelf in Tesco, she would probably pack it incorrectly. Her body language, her hubris, her mentality tells you that she thinks she is holier than thou. So she's not going to want to take instructions from you. So she's incapable of working under anybody. If you had to get her into a nursing, into the nursing profession, she'd probably be responsible for the deaths of a lot of her patients. If you had to get her into a teaching capacity, God forbid, she would churn out students that have gone to school and come out worse off than when they first went in. So do you see what I'm saying? There's no place in society. This is somebody that if she had to grow up in the UK, she would have had to sit on the system, claim benefits, and sit at home. Let her watch EastEnders and Coronation Street and sit at home and watch TV, and that's all she would have been good for. Because there is absolutely nothing within this person that is of any significant use to society at large. Nothing. She has nothing to contribute. In fact, by her not contributing, society is better off. So you would have rather paid her to sit at home than to have gone out into industry to try and do something. Because whatever she did, it would be a disaster. Her body language, her behavior, her inability to want to at least entertain somebody else's viewpoint, all that tells you she would never survive. Nevertheless, let's go on. Geography, 7th grade. In 2022, British Foreign Minister Liz Truss said in an interview with the BBC that London supports Baltic allies through the Black Sea. This kind of thing has come to be normal. The Baltic and the Black Seas are separate by more than 1,000 kilometers. Which university do you propose and send her to? This is school curriculum. Truss gets a 2. At the negotiations in Moscow, the same Liz Truss, when asked by Minister of Foreign Affairs Sergei Lavrov whether she recognizes Russian sovereignty over the Rostov and Voronezh regions, she confidently said that she would never recognize it. I remember how the British ambassador blushed, bent down, and whispered to her that the mentioned regions were part of Russia. Let me remind you that Rostov was founded in 1862 and Voronezh in 1586. Truss gets another 2. So, Zakharova saved her comments on Kallas et al. Until the very end of her almost 4-hour briefing. So, I urge you to have a look at this article. It's a brilliant article. But, it goes to highlight the point I've continuously made. Europe, in terms of the European Commission, the EU Parliament, the current leaders in Europe, the United Kingdom as well, they are leaders devoid of any intellectual capability. There is nothing that they have. There is no level of intelligence. There is nothing that they can go out there and say to the world. And this is why I say S. Jaishankar of India and Sergei Lavrov of Russia are the two diplomats that spring to mind when you talk of diplomacy. Barring those two, there's nothing. I can't tell you of any other diplomat that is going to be deserved of that position that they hold, simply because of comments like this and behaviors like this. And these are not one-offs. These are consistent. There's a consistent pattern of them behaving in this manner throughout their term. And rather than them being called out, and in the private sector, you'd be fired for making decisions like this. You'd be fired for thinking like this and behaving in this manner, because you're not being productive. But you see time and again, they become rewarded, they get promoted. So this article by Ray McGovern, while there's a lot of comedy in it, and not comedy that has been manufactured, this is comedy because of the comments spouted by these morons, Baerbock, Truss, Kallas. These people have no understanding of history, yet they still go out and talk nonsense. So I want to thank you for spending time with us. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Please remember to like, share and subscribe, as it helps us with the algorithm and it helps our channel to grow.